Once upon a time, in a village with no rain, a little girl made a wish. But to make it come true, she had to give up her voice forever. Would you give up your voice if it meant that your town would be saved? What about your sight, or your sense of smell? How about your sense of touch? That's what we're talking about today. In today's story, our main character is a kind, quiet girl named Amina, who loves to sing. She lives in a small village with her parents and younger brother. For months there has been no rain. Rivers have run dry, crops have withered and died, and everyone is miserable. One evening, while walking home from an unsuccessful search for water, Amina and her family hear a beautiful singing voice. They follow the sound and soon find a small clearing where they see a beautiful fairy sitting on a rock. The fairy was so lovely, like a vision from heaven itself. Her wings shimmered with all the colors of the rainbow, and her dress flowed around her like water. When she noticed them staring at her, she stopped singing and asked them, "Can I help you?" Startled by her sudden appearance, Amina's father quickly composed himself and asked the fairy, "Please forgive me, noble fairy, for we were simply drawn here by your beautiful singing. But could you not spare a drop of water for us? Our village has been suffering terribly from a lack of rain." The fairy shook her head sadly and said, "I am sorry, but I cannot do that. There has been no rain for months because a terrible drought has fallen upon the land. This drought will only end when someone makes the ultimate sacrifice." Hearing this, Amina's father felt desperate. He thought for a moment, then suddenly had an idea. Turning to his daughter, he said, "Amina, my child, please go over there and ask the fairy for a single drop of water. You know that I would do anything for you." Amina nodded obediently and walked towards the fairy. Before she knew it, she was kneeling before the magical creature. Looking up at the fairy with tears in her eyes, she asked for a drop of water. However, instead of simply handing her a drop of water, the fairy said, "You are a kind child, and I can see that you have a good heart. I will grant you one wish in return for your help." Confused, Amina asked, "What do you mean? What do you want me to do?" The fairy smiled mysteriously and said, "All I ask is for you to give me something precious to you. In exchange, I will fulfill one of your wishes." At first, Amina did not know what to say. She thought for a moment, trying to come up with an answer. Finally, she said, "Well, I have nothing that I would not give to save my village, so I will give you whatever you want." The fairy nodded approvingly and said, "Very well. Then give me your voice. It is clear to me that you use it to bring joy to others. Surely you understand how important it is for the people of your village to hear a beautiful song right now." Amina frowned slightly. Of course, she loved to sing and always brought joy to the people with her songs. However, she believed that rain was more important than her songs. And so she answered, "Okay, I'll give you my voice. Please bring rain to our village." The fairy waved her magic wand and said, "So be it." With that, she disappeared. At first, Amina couldn't believe what had happened. Had she really just given up her voice forever? She looked around and saw that the other villagers were also staring at her in surprise. Some of them even looked disappointed. However, she paid no attention to them. Instead, she looked up at the sky and waited. A few moments later, dark clouds began to form overhead, and Amina watched with a smile as raindrops began to fall. She could hardly believe it. It was raining. Soon the entire village was covered in a thick layer of refreshing water. Plants sprouted anew and the people rejoiced. But as Amina watched the other villagers dancing and singing in the rain, she realized that she was no longer able to join in. She tried to speak, but no sound came out of her mouth. In fact, she couldn't even make a single sound. She had lost her voice forever. Suddenly, Amina regretted her decision. Was it really worth giving up her voice just to save her village? She thought she had done the right thing. After all, everyone was celebrating and thanking her. But now she felt miserable. All she wanted to do was sing and bring joy to the people, but now she could do neither of those things. As the days passed, Amina became increasingly upset. She spent most of her time alone in her room, listening to the birds singing outside. She missed her voice terribly. One day the fairy returned to the village. She had heard that Amina was unhappy and wanted to speak with her. When she found her sitting alone in her room, she asked, "Why are you sad? I granted your wish and brought rain to your village. Shouldn't you be happy?" Amina shook her head and replied, "I am grateful to you for bringing rain to our village, but I'm sad because I've lost my voice forever. Now I can no longer sing and bring joy to the people." The fairy listened patiently and then said, "You are wrong. You did not lose your voice. You simply traded it for something else. But I did that because I wanted to save my village. If I hadn't, we would still be suffering from the drought." Amina replied, "That is true. But you forget that you traded something of yours for something that belonged to the village. What you gave was something that brought joy to people, but what you received was something that merely benefited people. In other words, you gave something that was yours to help others, but you took something that was not yours to help yourself. Do you understand the difference?" Amina thought for a moment and then said, "Yes, I think I do. I gave something of myself to help others, but I took something that wasn't mine to help myself. So does that mean that I don't deserve the rain that you brought to the village?" "No, that is not what I said. I simply told you that you gave with love, but you received out of selfishness. The universe rewards those who give with love, but punishes those who take out of selfishness. Therefore, you must learn to give without expecting anything in return." With that, the fairy waved her magic wand and said, "Your punishment is over. You get your voice back." Amina couldn't believe her ears. Could it be true? She tried to make a sound and was overjoyed to find that she could sing again. She ran outside and sang as beautifully as ever. The people heard her and came running from all over the village to see what was going on. When they heard her song, they understood that she had regained her voice, and they cheered. From that day forward, Amina continued to sing and bring joy to the people, and whenever she did, she remembered the words of the fairy. Whenever we give something to others out of love, the universe will give us back more than we could ever imagine. So whenever you have the opportunity to help someone, do it without expecting anything in return. You never know what kind of happiness it might bring into their life. The end. Now it's time for you to give with love. Give this video a like and share it with your friends and family. And if you haven't already, then what are you waiting for? Subscribe and become part of our community. Thanks for watching. See you next time.